Fluffy, of course, by Ween. This is the 10th and final track on 12 Golden Country Greats. Let's just talk about the tuning first, then I'll go over the chords stuff. So, yeah, when they play this live, they're playing it in the key of D, in this D position, right? This position. Right? And technically, I guess the song kind of resolves it G at the end. But anyway, on the album, it's in the key of C, and then I guess it resolves at A at the end. So sounds more like that, right? And you can play this in drop D, and it'll sound like the album. You should just change it up a bit, but I'm going to teach it how they play it in the proper position and all that. And I think they're playing it in the you can tell they're playing it in this position on the album, and I think the musicians tuned down a full step, which would be like 2 frets, so to speak. I think they just tuned down a whole step, and then of course the vocals are pitched down, they're modulated in that sense. And I think they probably tuned down when they played, then maybe sped the tape up. It doesn't really matter. It's not really important or relevant to this particularly, but I would say that they, because it sounds like they tuned down to me. It doesn't really sound like the instrumental is like, because it sounds like it would sound a bit different and a lot different if they literally slowed the tape down on the guitar, and all the pedal steel and stuff would sound different. So anyway, point is, if you want to play along with the album, just play what I'm playing, but tune everything down a full step. So it'd be D standard. Anyway, so let's go over the chords first. By the way, this guitar part was played by Pete Wade on the album, and it's really great playing, but there's a certain looseness to it. Like it's well played and all that, but we'll get to it when we get to the picking. So first of all, let's just talk about the chords. The verse, which I'll call it, is it basically just goes back and forth between this D sus2, D major, except you got your open E. Although sometimes a lot of the time actually, he will have that major third in there in the top string there. He will, but for the beginning especially, I would say it's best to have it like that, right? And then this little walk down, right? So 3, 2, open on the low E. Just an E minor. It basically just alternates between those two. Again, sometimes we'll do major. And rhythmically what's going on there, it kind of trips some people up, but it's pretty simple when you know what's happening. So it's a bar of 5/4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that bar of 5/4, that's the only weird thing timing wise. And I'm sure when they wrote it, it just came out that way because the extra beat is just there to fit in this walk down. So it's just like a bar of 4/4, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is a bar of 5/4, but like that's probably how it goes. There's no other odd time stuff in the song. It's really just that one thing that they fit in there. That's how the verse goes, right? And then the next part starts off with a D major. Again, a lot of the time he will include that open string in there, but I would say more often than not, most of the time, that one is going to be mostly including that note. And then this is basically like a D minor 7, right, with the open D string, 5th fret and 6th fret on the G and B, and then open high E. We'll talk about the picking in a second, but yeah, it's basically like a D minor 7 with that 9th in there. Sounds really pretty and kind of haunting. And then just a G major. Sometimes we'll change up the voicing slightly, where he'll sometimes include that note on the B string, but most of the time it's open. And I don't think he's playing the A string. I think he's basically just muting that. And he will, we'll get to the picking later, but he basically includes stuff like that. So, and the song ends with the guitar solo and whatnot, and the last progression through, they'll play the chorus part. So then G for 1 bar, and then it ends on G. And I think it's voiced like that, where it's he does include the A string there for the last chord, if I had to guess. And I think he voices that with the B string 3rd fret there instead of open. I think it's got a 3rd fret. So that's how the song ends. Anyway, so the picking, right? So there's lots of little fiddling and licks in there. I can't include all of them because there's just way too many, and they're not all essential, really. So it's hybrid picked because you can definitely hear the attack of a pick there, but there's definitely some finger picking going on. I would just say, for the sake of it, it's basically, I'm just using, you know, there's definitely some finger picking mixed in, but I'm just going to do hybrid picking with basically just the pick and my middle finger here, right? Which I'm comfortable doing anyway. So the opening arpeggio, which again, I think there's lots of improvisation sort of, but I think you should really get this down like how it is on the record, because it's, you know, really iconic sort of, so. Right, so this is I'm gonna mostly say the strings for stuff like this instead of the frets and all that, because it's mostly built around the chords. So D, G, B, then D, then high E, and I think you're gonna pinch the high E along with the G string. Then B, G, D, then walk down, low E, and then he hits the A and D string there, and then he hits the B and G, and you can kind of finger pick, brush some of these, but I think it's more accurate to, right, so, and then hit some lower notes there. It doesn't have to be anything particular, so, and then I hear sort of him pinching the G and E string again. But you could also just strum up there the higher notes, get that open B in there, but I don't think he does. Then again, any lower notes, and then just pluck that B while the other strings are still ringing out, so. And then maybe hit the open G after that or whatever. That's essentially the verse. And then as the song goes on, especially like when you get to the last verse and stuff, and maybe even under the solo, he's doing a lot more of that just D string. He's including this note a lot more. I mean, as early as the first verse, you can hear him including that. He'll do stuff like that where he'll, you know, where he'll pick the first couple notes and then pinch that with that note. He'll do stuff like that. So I would say most of the time you want to keep most of those more towards the later half of the song, where he really heavily does that during the verse, right? So, and then the chorus, he's definitely going to have more, again, most of the time. You want to emphasize that major third, that 2nd fret. Just to be clear what note I'm talking about. You want to emphasize that note more when he goes to the chorus. More than on the verse, so. And then when he goes to this, he definitely does that at least once. So it's open D, so it's D, G. He just goes down. And then B, G, then high E, G, right? And then I remember one time, again, he does a bunch of variations, but this is just the basic bones of it. I remember one time he pinches the G and E after the second hit, after he hits the open D, I should say. Right, so. And sometimes I'll strum like that. Like, there's not a whole lot of hard, fast rules in terms of what to pick and what not. I mean, there is, you know, you want to hit the chords and all that, but especially with this chord right here. So the G. So after that, and then he's gonna go to the G. So 3rd fret, again, mute the A string, 3rd fret, the low E, and then open D, G, and B. This is gonna go back down, so after the B, go back down to the G and the D. Hit that low note. And then you can hear him do this often as a... Alright, so that's a hammer-on, 2nd fret of the open D, 2nd fret of the D, and he'll include those G and B strings. And he'll hammer on to there. And I think sometimes later on in the song especially, he'll include that note on the B string when he's just improvising, you know, the higher D note, so it still fits in the chord. Especially sounds nice with that little 9th suspension in there, right? So, right, and that's essentially all the parts. And like I said, it just ends on that G. So that's essentially the rhythm parts. There's lots of different improvisational things that he does, but they're not super significant to list them all or anything. So those are essentially the parts. And the only thing left really is the solo. I would love to, it would definitely, this is on electric and all that, but I'll just show it on acoustic because I figure why not? Because it is playable, sort of. It's at least, I can at least demonstrate it. So it's a little tricky to play on this, but... Right, so... and that's essentially that repeated. But, so, you can see the frets and all that, so... This is 14 of the high E. Right, so... Then, you know, pluck 12, hammer on. Pull, bend up. All right. Bend up, half step. And the first time he does it, he goes, all right, so he bends up again and bends back down. Then, a lot of people don't know he picks that note twice, but he does it, but it's very quiet the second time he does it. So, then, so 12, slide down, then pluck again, then 12 on the B, and then he goes up here, 17. Again, this would be a lot easier to reach if it was electric, so don't worry about that. That's 17 of the high E. And then he's going to very lightly hit it again, and then hit it with a bit more volume, and hammer on to 19. And pluck that. And then you could either go, or you could just like pluck it twice or pluck it once, but there's definitely a hammer on right there. And then the last one you can pluck or not. And he does it again. It's the same phrase the second time. It's just the only difference is instead of going, he just plucks it, right? So it ends, and then it goes from there. And the song ends. Now, it's the exact same part happens, but it's an octave lower, so I'll demonstrate that on, it's probably on the G string, would be the easiest place to play that. So it's just... right? So that's essentially a solo. And that's pretty much it. So the lesson's over now. Actually, the lesson's just over now. And I'd like to just talk about why I decided to do this song. So I don't usually get into like personal stuff at all because that's not really what matters. And the only reason I'm talking about this is because it's pretty, you know, relevant to this song and my feelings towards it. So I thought it was worth mentioning. Recently, a really good friend of mine, a little fuzzy guy who was really tiny, his name was Max, and I've known him for like 14 years, you know, part of the family and all that, love him to death, and recently he has passed away. And yeah, real sad and all that, but the reason I mention this is really recent actually, as the recording of this video, but the reason I mention this is that, you know, I gotta be honest, this song, Fluffy, I've always had like conflicted feelings about it beforehand. And, you know, how serious is it trying to be and all that? It's a question a lot of people have about Ween in general is how serious is it? It's mostly the vocals that sort of trip people up. And I remember hearing in that, I mentioned before, but the Podween Satan podcast, perspective on it that I never heard, which is the down-tuned vocals are sort of meant to emulate like the silly voice that you often talk to your dog with, which I thought was a really interesting take. And, you know, thinking about that perspective too, a lot of people think the song's sort of a joke because it's supposed to be this like saccharine ballad about a dog, but it never gets to that point where something tragic happens to the dog. It's just about how a dog is sitting there, and it's kind of funny how it's the juxtaposition on how it's just about a dog and everyone's happy, but nothing ever happens to it. You know, it's set up to be a sad song. The sort of perspective I would take with the song in hindsight is it's not supposed to be that. An interpretation I have was maybe it's sung from the perspective of someone thinking back and having memories. Maybe the dog has passed away from the perspective of the owner and the protagonist who's singing the song, and they're focusing on, you know, the sort of memories that they have with the dog and how it's the other dogs and me and Penny or hanging out with the Fluffy on the porch and all that. It's just sort of thinking back to nostalgic thoughts. And I thought that because, you know, it's not really important to dwell on when a pet dies, when they pass away. It's just, it's a matter of focusing on the memories of everyone. This is all very cliche stuff, I know, but I thought it was interesting that, you know, this song, as silly as I thought that it was before, through, you know, really sad events in life, I have sort of a newfound appreciation for, a new perspective on it. And I think it's important that music like this, even, you know, it can come from the weirdest sources. Like a band like Ween, I wouldn't think necessarily a song like Fluffy would sort of have this weird transformation for me, even though it's sort of an easy thing to say, well, you know, talking about a dog and having a song about a dog who passed away is sort of cheap bait. But as previously said, you know, the dog doesn't necessarily pass away in the song, depending on how you look at it. But so I don't think it's like cheap emotional manipulation or anything. I think it's just earnest, you know, the song. And I think that's the earnestness of the song, even though it's kind of goofy and stuff from a certain point of view, is really what kind of drives me to have a different perspective on it. You know, if they just made a sad song where it's about a dog, but then the dog passes away, I wouldn't have any sort of new perspective on it in recent years. And this isn't even a new thing for me. I had another pet, another dog named Emmy that I love very much that passed away and lost her a while ago. But that's, you know, so it's not a new thing. It's just, it's interesting how perspective can change over time. And I just think it's a testament to how much more there is than meets the eye with Ween, or the ear, I suppose you would say. And you can sort of re-listen and reevaluate them as you're going through. And that's what I really want to communicate with a lot of the videos that I make, is that, you know, there's a lot more to them, and they're legitimately great artists, no matter what anyone might think about them on the surface. But enough. I don't know if you call it soapboxing or whatever, but thank you for watching, especially if you watched to the end. But if you just watched the lesson, thank you for learning the song, and see you later.